Hey everyone, welcome to another Open Cluster Management Community Meetings. Today is June 21st, 2024, and on the agenda today, as I can see, I put an agenda about E2E testing for OCM on the non-kind cluster. So let me share my screen first. Okay, so I guess QGen or anyone else can jump in whenever, but essentially in OCM in our OCM repo, whenever we make a PR request, we run through these GitHub action, and one of them is the workflows, and it's the E2E, and in the E2E test, you we can just skim through it. Like clearly we're creating a kind clusters, we're loading the images that we built, using the PR changes, and then we run the E2E test. It's all great. As an example here, QGen's PR on the refactoring on the registration. It's all great because it's free. Uh, the client cluster gets started and then get destroyed at the expense of GitHub, and there's no cost to the community or anything. But as we're trying to support, OCM on EKS, which is a non the test that we're running on kind might not be compatible on the EKS. So we really need an EKS environment to be able to run those tests to fully know, hey, you know, our registration, like if the registration work is completed, uh, the EKS E2E test should be run so that we know, uh, whatever we have merged in is still successful. So I talk with the team internally in Red Hat, and then I they told me, hey, they got these Jenkins running on, they have multiple other tests, and one of the pipeline is, they can create a EKS cluster, so they can also chain a bunch of these pipelines together to form a job, and then the job can be executed periodically, and then on the Jenkins, it'll report the results and whatnot. But the only downside is this Jenkins environment is in Red Hat. It's not, viewable publicly. And to be honest, I'm not a Kiwi. I don't even have access to be able to craft this job. I have to ask the Kiwi team to create this job for me. So, but as a first step, I don't think that's too big of an issue. Like if we create a job, create the EKS cluster, run the test, and then if it can automatically detects if it fails or pass, and then it'll open an issue when it fails. I think that'll be a good first step. So I just want to share that with the community and see what are your thoughts. Like, are there any concerns that, okay, this E2E test, unlike the E2E test that we currently have, is not linked to the PR, and any concern that this is quite internal to Red Hat. It's hard to make modification to it, and it might be hard to triage it, right? Because everything is in the Red Hat environment. So I'm just sharing that my idea for now, and I wonder if there's anyone that I can pick the brains on. So I'm gonna go with Q Chang first. So Q Chang, what do you think?
Uh, uh, yeah. So, so to me that EKS cluster is created by can be provisioned by Red Hat info.
Yes, it is provisioning through a Red Hat account.
Yeah, so how do we run the test? Like, do we need to provision that per PR, or it's more like a uh periodic?
It's more
Uh,
like periodic, yes.
yeah, I think it's I'm fine with that. I'm not sure. Will that how is the cost? Like what cost we need to pay for such pipeline?
So I can't really talk about the cost, but we're just starting an EKS cluster and blowing it up, you know, uh, pretty rapidly. So it wouldn't be that high. And plus, the pre how frequent the tests can also be controlled to lower the cost. I also want to mention we do in the QE test right now, in the QA team right now do create and destroy EKS cluster quite frequently to test their import functionality. So our cost of creating the EKS cluster, running to E2E, maybe I don't know what our frequency will be, but I think one of the community members suggested once a week, or depending on if once a week, maybe if it's successful, maybe I was thinking let's retry it like 2 times or something, so we don't get any false alarm. So maybe 3 times a week wouldn't be that big of a cost issue, I don't think. But I'll talk to the QE team more about it. So I just want to bring it up to the community first before I even request the QE team on this task because I don't want to waste anyone's time. So I don't. So in summary, I don't think cost is too big of an issue. Maybe I took a glimpse and I saw Nelson in the list. So Nelson, sorry to pick on you, so to speak. If you can comment on the cost as well, I think you're the best person in the list to talk a little bit about that.
I don't know if I can comment about it right now, though.
Got it. Got it. Yep. I will put you in optional in the meeting. Okay. So let's skip the cost conversation for now. So Qjiang, so
Yeah, so another thing is about a credential, like do we need, so what's a credential we need to keep? Uh, so does that mean that this will be fully automated by the GitHub action or something? How what can so it's more like the jack, we will create a Jenkins. So this all the thing is set in the Jenkins, right? It doesn't need we set anything in the upstream repo, like to store the credentials in the upstream.
no, if we exactly we don't need to make any modification to upstream. The plan is to create the EKS cluster and a little bit more details. Create the EKS cluster, clone the OCM repo,
Yeah,
compile it, and then run the E2E test, and then and then if it fails, gather the logs. Hopefully, it has the capability of creating an issue. So, and I don't think creating an issue will require any changes to the OCM repo as well, because let's say they have their own bot user, GitHub bot user, and then they create the GitHub issue with the logs or with the output, and then they just wipe away the cluster. And so one of the thing is we wouldn't be able to access the cluster because it just comes and goes very quickly.
yeah.
If we can publish the report in case there are failures to a publicly accessible uh, place, I think that would be helpful as well, especially in case of failures.
Yes, it'll be published to as a automatically as a bug report here. So it'll say, hey, EKS E2E fail. and then it will have the logs in here.
Right. I hope the Jenkins build, in addition to creating EKS cluster, we can use IAM, AWS IAM as well, because that will be required for the verification end to end.
Right. Yes, that is a very good detail, and I need to make a note of that. It needs to have a AWS IAM account, so we can get the hub key config, right?
Right, because we are planning to do it using roles, by creating roles on both hub as well as admin, as well as managed. The cube config can only be successfully generated if the hub can assume the role successfully. And then managed cluster can assume the role successfully, and hub can validate the STS token as well.
So Qijang, you know this better than me by far. So the registration E2E currently we're running, it looks like it's running a self-import, right? So we're creating only one kind cluster, and then we're registering itself as a managed cluster. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
So in the case of EKS E2E, I know we're speaking way ahead because we don't have that capability yet. But if we do have that capability and is as envisioned with the AWS IAM registration, can we still do everything in a single EKS cluster with the self import, similar to what we currently have with the kind test?
I think we can. I think for some of the E2E today, they are purely for like CSR registration, and if we run all the E2E test suite in the EKS, we need to filter out those CSR based registration test case. We can do that by a label based filtering. But for the other test case, like including the manifest word test case and scheduling based test case, we always can run it, no matter whether it's in the kind or in the EKS.
Correct. I think at this point, if we can run the EKS registration based tests alone on EKS, I think that might suffice, because the rest of the functionality, we are not touching anything in rest of the functionality, right? So that should work regardless of which underlying cluster we use.
Yes. That's also possible. I think one so one thing that is not quite sure for me currently is maybe you have already validated is about for example, the webhook, validating webhook and mutation webhook that fully support on the EKS. If that has no difference with other Kubernetes cluster, I think it's fine to just.
Yes, I think the webhooks should work like same as how it works on kind or any other like self-managed.
So going back to the original question, so Qijang, we just need one EKS cluster, right? Because that also factor in the cost as well. We're just creating one EKS cluster. We do essentially a self-registration, and then we can sort of confirm that the E2E is successful and the registration is successful, and then we can blow the cluster away. We don't need to create another EKS cluster to act as a managed cluster, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think in that way we could add EKS registration specific test on the E2E with a certain label. So we just run the EKS based E2E on the EKS cluster. And
Great.
just import the cluster, self-import within the same cluster as hub and manage cluster.
Okay. Any other suggestion? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I just want to mention a work in progress PR of the mutable hub feature, or we often see it as a switch hub. In that PR, actually, I'm working on create a mutable Kai cluster, like 3 Kai cluster to do E2E. So if we only have one EKS, maybe this feature cannot covered by our EKS end-to-end cases. But like Juliet said, we can have different labels to separate end-to-end cases. Like we can run a set of cases, especially against the EKS.
Thank you, Shuja. I'm actually very surprised you can do this because you're creating 3 kind clusters and it still have enough. Did it pass? Yeah.
No.
I wasn't sure if it has enough, processing power or to be
Yeah.
able to do this.
This part, I see Commanda. I have checked their end-to-end test script. So they have they created 3 clusters, but before they create clusters, they do some desk free. They add uh, get action to free desk space. So maybe we also need that, but run 3 clusters is verified by Canada side. So yeah, I'm trying. And if it also works in our side, I can sync it to our channel.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Any other suggestions? Let's say we don't take this Jenkins approach. Anyone have any good ideas how we can test um, the EKS registration?
I actually have a question about the do we now treat EKS as our first uh, this Kubernetes distribution support distribution we want to a special distribution we want to support, like EKS is special, then GKS and OCP, and so we put it in our community, or like in the future we will test against all different Kubernetes distributions in our E2E.
I think the reason is the registration process in EKS will be different than others. Like in AKS and GKE, you can still use the CSR. I'm not sure about the GKE actually. But in AKS, we can, if AKS as a hub, we can still use the CSR based registration. And that's just the same as what we did today. But EKS, you cannot use that. It will be like leveraging the EKS IAM and STS to do the registration. So the reason to test on EKS is to ensure that process works.
Okay, so so you are saying we are using the EKS IAM process to do our registration.
Yeah.
Is EKS process able to install like in a Kai cluster, so we can use a Kai cluster to simulate EKS, or we actually need to use the EKS because this part of IAM cannot it can only work on a EKS.
I think as long as kind cluster can access, I'm not 100% sure. We have not tried it yet, but I believe as long as kind cluster can connect to IAM, it might work. But again, yeah, I guess it might work, but if we are anyway using IAM, AWS IAM service for the testing, we might as well use EKS as well, right?
Well, the Qzhang's initial step, work in progress, but his initial step right now is not even dealing with EKS specifically. Qzhang is doing a refactoring to make it so it's more of a common interface. So when we're testing, hopefully, the test coverage will be quite high, even if it's not going through the EKS specific part of the code. So I guess that's one way to increase our test coverage. I think as David Eads suggested before in our meetings. But yeah, in terms of getting kind to talk to AWS, like I can maybe at most we can fake it, like we can mock it. We call AWS, and we spec the call, and then we fake in the token inside or something like that. But yeah, even when you mock it, then it wouldn't be a true E2E test. It'll be just you're mocking it on the kind cluster. So at the end of the day, we want to create a real E2E. I mean, we want to create a real EKS cluster and then run the E2E test and flow through all the way.
I just realized, sorry for interrupting, that in EKS, there are some additional components like IAM Authenticator, and there are some EKS specific webhooks. I think those are required those might be required for this entire thing to work end to end. So running these tests on kind might not be an option.
Shujao brought up a great point. I think I also look into the EKS on-prem, and I know is a open source project. And I was looking. I think I did browse a little bit into see if they do anything here. But yeah, I mean, if because it's an on-prem open source project, I was thinking, maybe we can somehow start this locally in the GitHub action as well. But at the end of the day, this is not testing EKS, right? This is now testing EKS anywhere, which is close to EKS, but it's not the actual EKS that we want to test, right? So I gave up on digging into it. But I mean, that's Shuzhao. I mean, that's another, maybe there's another option that we can look at. So EKS Anywhere is an on-prem EKS, and it's supposed to be a open source project. So it's tested using Pro. Yeah, they're using Pro. Yeah, that's another part that I should look into if we can use the Pro to do something like that. EK opportunities.
Yeah. I was also thinking, so say if we put this E2E end-to-end E2E cluster in our end-to-end test, and a PR failed on E2E test on EKS E2E test cases because of a very specific E2E a very specific EKS problem. Does this failure will block our PR? So we need to
Well, our first step, we're not planning to put the EKS E2E into our PR. We're not gonna hook it into the GitHub action.
no.
It's not that we don't want to, because there is a limitation in terms of, how do we like get it? How do we, we don't have the, well, at least I don't have a account that we can share on the OCMIO side that have the permission to create EKS and then do all that. But right now the plan is having the Jenkins job that create the run the E2A test periodically only. So it wouldn't block the PRs, so to speak. Not saying that's a good thing, but you know.
Since we have different versions now, so I guess this Jenkins job is run against all versions, right? Not only the main branch.
That is a great point, and I need to jot that down, and I'll discuss with the QE as well. That's another question that comes with that goes into the realm of cost, right? If we're gonna test all our version, it might get expensive as well. So for now, I was mostly thinking of the main branch and the latest code. Well, thank you all for that discussion. That was really helpful. Qicheng, do you have any other topics that you have in mind for this week's community meeting?
No, the only thing is we are almost finished all the task on for the 0.14, so I'm starting to tag the API repo and OCM repo. I should be able to finish it today, or yeah, I think I should be able to finish it today. And then I will draft a release announcement about the 0.14.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I actually got information to think. I got a chance to talk with the policy folks, and I bring our scope reduce idea to them, and their feedback is very positive, and they think now policies can run independently, and they think now policies depending too much on the OCM, heavily depends on the OCM framework. So their idea is also to maybe they can keep the add-on framework integration part, stay in the OCM, and make policy another project. So, but it's not a official discussion. So I think this message here, maybe Zhejiang and Mike, if you think it's a good time we can leverage the necessary people. Maybe we can make this idea actions if both our side are happy with the scope reduce.
Yeah, I think we need to make a decision with them, like so what does that mean? Does that mean that they will not So we will archive the repos of policies in the OCM. And so we have to, I think we need to discuss with in more detail. And I think that makes sense. But we need to have a plan on how they want to treat those repos.
Yeah.
And also maybe we need to let's also create a message in the Slack to ask how the policy, whether there's any adoption of the policy in upstream, what if we only keep the add-on part and
Mm.
put them into put the other policy-based controller into archive and move them into another organization, etc.
And I can speak on behalf of app. I mean, for app, we do have a heavy dependency on OCM, and if app were to leave OCM, we wouldn't be starting our own project, right? It'll be just deprecated away in Strong. So if OCM doesn't want to kick app out, then app is staying. That's what I'm essentially saying. So it really depends on what the community thinks about app, and and the other maintainers, and Shujiao and Qzheng, Kunhao, Liang, everyone thinks about app. So that's my position on the app side.
Mm. Yeah, I have checked the three policy reports, and I think the policy side uh, they do a lot of work. They did a lot of work to make sure a policy component can run on a cluster without OCM. So maybe for policy part, it's an easy choice, but the other component uh, we can consider um, maybe we can keep some. Yeah.
Yeah, I think instead of so probably we need to review. So we are talking about the scope of the project. The background, if everyone is not clear, is like we are discussing about the incubation application for the NCF, and we discussed with Karina, who is a TOC members in the CNCF, and one of her concern is what's the scope of the project, and what's the maintainability of the project. Like if you have many different repos, and how we can ensure all this is maintainable. So in addition to thinking about like, so maybe we need to change the scope, but before that, maybe in one of the community meeting, we could review all the repo, and maybe we should check the activities and see and decide like what's a correct scope for the maintain in open cluster management.
Yep, I completely agree. I mean, this is not a small task, and we definitely need to plan it out.
Yeah.
But thank you, Shujia, for initiate that conversation. It's really helpful. I mean, it'll get us further into the getting ready for CNCF's incubation. Okay, are there any other topics anyone want to bring up? Well, thank you everyone for joining. Have a great day. Take care.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.